All right, guys, for this week in math, we are going to be talking about triangles and classifying triangles. So we all know that a triangle has three sides to it. And what you might not know is that when you add all of the angles up in a triangle, it is always going to equal 180 degrees. So we've been talking about angles in our last topic, and we're going to be using what we know about angles to help us classify different types of triangles. So classify means to put something in a category, right? So if we classify triangles by their angles, then we're going to classify them or put them into categories based on what type of angles they have. So our first type of angle, and you're going to see these words here are very familiar to you. Our first type of triangle is an acute triangle, okay? So just like what you know about acute angles is going to apply to acute triangles. So for an acute triangle, all the angles in that triangle are going to be acute angles. Now remember what acute means. So acute means it's a cute little angle. So it's going to be less than 90 degrees. And that's all three of them. All three. Okay, all three angles are going to be acute. Now, a right triangle. What do we know about a right angle? A right angle equals 90 degrees. So a right triangle is going to have one right angle. And remember, a right angle is 90 degrees. So in my right angle here, we see the square down in the corner that tells us it's a right angle, and we see 90 degrees. Something I forgot, let's move back to the acute angle. Triangle, which you might not be able to see, is the angles here measure 59 degrees, 55 degrees, and 66 degrees. And those are all acute because they're less than 90, right? So an acute angle, all angles are less than 90 degrees. A right angle has one 90-degree angle. And then lastly, we have an obtuse triangle. And what we know about an obtuse angle is that it is greater than 90 degrees. So an obtuse triangle is going to have one obtuse angle. And we know that an obtuse angle is more than 90 degrees. So in my obtuse triangle that I have drawn here, I have one angle, this top angle is 100 degrees. So it's more than 90. So that tells me that this is an obtuse triangle. Okay, so we can classify our triangles by angles, but we can also classify our triangles by their sides. So let me flip this over. So we know that a triangle, we talked about its angles, has three angles, and it also has three sides. So we can also classify or put it into groups based on the measurements of its sides. Okay, so we have three different types of triangles, or three different types of sides that we classify by their sides. Three types of triangles classified by their sides. There we go. All right, so our first one is an equilateral. And I want to point something out to you. Get a different color. Equilateral. So an equilateral triangle, we see this here, equal. It's not spelled the same as equal, but it has the same root or prefix, right? So equilateral. So equal meaning that all three of the sides of the triangle are equal to each other. So an equilateral triangle has all three sides are equal. So 3 sides are equal or the same length. Okay, now in my triangle, in the one that you have on your math notebook page, you're going to see these kind of like hash marks or dashes through the sides. And on this triangle, you see that there's 1 hash mark through each side of the triangle. That tells us, or that's a symbol that tells us that all 3 sides are equal length. You'll also see in the angles here that they have 1 kind of arch or arc in the corners or in the angles. And because there's just 1 of them in those angles, that means all 3 angles are equal. So if all 3 sides are equal in an equilateral triangle, all 3 angles are equal as well. So an equilateral means everything's equal. Everything's the same measurement, okay? Then we have an isosceles. Isosceles. All right, so isosceles triangle, we see that the hash mark is through 2 of my sides, the same hash mark, 1, 2. This third side down here doesn't have 1. Well, that tells me that these 2 sides here are equal to each other, but this side at the bottom is not equal to these 2. So an isosceles triangle has at least 2 sides that are equal to each other. 2 sides, not all 3, just 2. So if the 2 sides are equal, we see down here, the arc here down in the angles here, so these 2 angles are equal. So if it has 2 equal sides, it has 2 equal angles as well. And then lastly, we have our scalene. Okay, so on this one, we see some different markings, right? So we see this side has 1 hash mark through it. This side has 2 hash marks through it. And this last side has 1, 2, 3 hash marks through it. So because they are all different symbols or different markings, then all 3 sides are different. And you'll notice that same thing with the angles. There's 1 arc, 2 arcs, and then 3 in this one. So all the angles and all the sides are different. So for a scalene, all 3 sides are different lengths. And because all 3 sides are different lengths, all angles are also different. Okay, so now what you're going to do, now that we've gone over the 6 types of triangles, we can classify by angles, we can classify by sides. You're going to watch a second video where we're going to go through kind of like a checklist to help us figure out what type of triangle it is and what group it fits into. So go ahead and end this video and then watch the second video that has been posted for you.